Good day, my name is Blue Suit and today I'll be going over my review of the post-apocalyptic steampunk 4X turn-based strategy city builder known as Punk Wars. In Punk Wars, civilization as we know it has been brought to its knees by the destructive power of the atom, completely eradicating most life on the planet. Eventually, the ashes of these wars give rise to new, powerful corporations, each convinced of their own superiority and right to rule. As the title suggests, these powers are all at constant war with each other and based at least somewhat on the steampunk motif. These factions are the steelpunk, the atom punk, the diesel punk, and the steampunk. On the surface, these four rising tribes don't seem all that unique, with mostly similar backstories about how they each rose to power after the bombs fell and how each believes their way of life is superior to their rivals. However, most of the fun and replayability in Punk Wars comes from how different and balanced each of these groups feel. For starters, each comes with their own short campaign that's a bit on the rails but goes into a bit more depth about their cultures and how they eventually grow to the mega city's most powerful corporation. Beyond their stories, each faction also comes with their own buildings, units, and skill trees. There aren't a lot of units that overlap between the four factions, and the large skill trees are completely unique to that faction based on their culture. For example, Dieselpunk has access to oil and refineries, giving them combustion engines and ballistic ammunition, while Atompunk has access to uranium, ray guns, and eventually atomic bombs. Matches are generally however long you want depending on your chosen map size, but they could potentially go on for hours if you wanted because the skill trees are so large. The way they are structured, however, does leave some room for improvement. On each faction's tree there are only two branches, each having minor decisions to make as you make your way down them. These minor decisions provide even more replayability as you pick and choose which technologies to invest in and which to prune, and I definitely would have been happy to see even more of these choices in a more complicated branching skill tree. Punk Wars gameplay feels really more akin to old school 4X games compared to some of the ultra deep titles that are on the market today. Being mostly combat focused, much of the game is rather simple to grasp after you leave the tutorial. In terms of management, every corporation has to have water, food, people, science, happiness, and a special resource depending on who you're playing. Steampunk uses steam, steelpunk uses iron, and so on. Happiness seems like the easiest to manage by taking care of your people, but if your citizens get too unhappy, they'll eventually start a rebellion and try to bring down your empire from within. There isn't any money in Punk Wars either. Buildings and units are instead purchased using the resources you have. So most early games start off with a lot of resource management as you're trying to scrounge up enough water to pay for your farm so you can get enough food to start hiring builders, which you need to make more stuff. It's a simple enough formula that eventually evolves into warfighting once you inevitably find and clash with enemy troops. The early game fighting is rather tactless as most factions have the same sort of units, but late game fights always become way more fun as you dive deeper into the skill trees to unlock some of the more exotic buffs and troops that Punk Wars has to offer. There is a bit of a learning curve, however, as you start to realize what to prioritize. When I first started playing, matches took forever until I really started to take advantage of all the resources in the map's nodes, as well as the various civilian structures to seize. Capturing these tiles gives you greater income, allowing you to build further and research faster. And even if you're heavy on one particular resource, you do have the ability to stretch your corporate muscles to trade items to create a balance. Finally, in both campaign modes and skirmishes, there are occasional issues brought to your attention regarding various issues in your realm. Depending on how you decide to handle these, will provide boons and pitfalls alike. It felt a bit RNG based as they are random and it's not always clear what the end result will be, but it served well to break up the turns with thoughtful choices. Punk Wars doesn't honestly have a lot of downsides for players looking for a simpler but refreshing 4X title, but its biggest downfalls do lie in its gameplay. There are several quality of life issues that really lend a dose of tedium and frustration to the game. For starters, the controls don't feel modern at all and come off as just clunky in most cases, because for one, camera movements are so fast and jerky and don't seem to respond to camera sensitivity options, and two, not only can you not rebind any of the keys, but there isn't even a legend to tell you what the hotkeys are. I've slowly discovered a few of them on my own, but even after a dozen hours, I'm convinced that there isn't a hotkey to proceed to the next turn. But instead, you have to actually click the button that cycles through all of your units and buildings before you can move on. I understand that Punk Wars is heavily influenced by the grand strategy titles of yesteryear, but these options are really staples of the genre at this point, and I think it's pretty reasonable to want to know what the buttons do in a video game, and in this genre specifically, to be able to remap them. That being said, beyond the controls, there are some nice available options to speed up the rate of play and make it easier to command your units. You can pick up Punk Wars when it launches tomorrow, November 11th, 2021 on Steam and GOG for $20, but it's really worth just a bit more. There are a few dated design choices that could be a barrier for some, but it's a great take on the 4X genre, mixed with creative skill trees and units and a ton of replayability from each of the 4 unique playable corporations that seals the deal as a simple but effective formula that fans of both the genre and steampunk will enjoy. So I'm valuing Punk Wars at $22, and I recommend it to anyone looking for a fun, combat-focused, simple turn-based grand strategy. I hope you enjoyed this review of Punk Wars. Come see me on Twitch where you can watch our reviews in progress 5 nights a week. As always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments what you thought about it. Until next time, peace!